In the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like maybe they're there for a weird reason. And now they've found sort of maybe one player to hyper fixate on that they feel stands at odds with what a WNBA player is in their minds. And
Katie Nolan, in a moment of unfiltered commentary, just went ahead and said the quiet part out loud for everyone to hear. And what's absolutely fascinating isn't just the content of her statement, but the context in which she delivered it. She was on Sue Bird's podcast, of all places. Yes, that's the very same Sue Bird who now effectively runs the women's program for USA Basketball. It's the same media platform that has been hosting these circular conversations for months, and somehow they always seem to land on the exact same baffling conclusion that the new fans, the very people driving unprecedented growth, are actually the problem. But here's the critical piece of the puzzle that nobody seems willing to address head on.
in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league. And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket and you being here is also helpful to the sport. And that's a really difficult thing to do. They had no sort of reverence for the fact that, like, buddy, this conversation's been going on without you for years and years and years.
Let's be honest for a moment. Katie Nolan's entire media career has been overwhelmingly defined by a series of failures. Remember when ESPN brought her in with all that fanfare? They handed her multiple shows, gave her primetime slots, and poured resources into her brand. The result? Every single one of those shows ultimately flopped, failing to find an audience. Now she's essentially doing her own thing, which amounts to appearing sporadically as a guest on whatever platform will book her for a segment. So when a media personality with that specific and well-documented track record starts to lecture the very fan base that has single-handedly rescued the WNBA from the brink of total irrelevance, we absolutely...
I hate that we have to go through people demanding certain actions from fan bases. People who have been following the WNBA through their drowning period, feeling better than the newer fans coming in because a certain somebody shined a light on the league, because a certain somebody is heads and shoulders above everything else we've seen in the league, because a certain somebody captivates people's imaginations, a certain somebody elevates above everybody.
This isn't just about a difference of opinion, it's about the credibility of the messenger and the baffling hostility towards the very source of the league's newfound success. She says new fans are there for a weird reason. Let's take a moment to really unpack that specific phrase, because it is incredibly revealing. It tells you everything you need to know about how the legacy WNBA fans and media establishment view this incredible moment of growth. What she's suggesting, without saying it directly, is that being a fan of one particular transcendent player, a generational talent, is somehow an illegitimate or improper way to engage with the sport.
Here we go.
During the WNBA this season, I feel like we sort of had one of those particular growing pains where it's like some of the people that are coming in and watching the sport and are fans of the sport feel like...
I'm not fans of the sport. I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not a fan of the WNBA. I'm a fan of Caitlyn Clark. One more time. I'm not a fan of the WNBA. I'm a fan of Caitlyn Clark. You call that toxic? I don't care. You call it part of the dark side? I represent that proudly. Let's go on.
Maybe they're there for a weird...
The idea that loving Caitlyn Clark's game, her incredible range that stretches defenses to their breaking point, her court vision that sees plays before they happen, her uncanny ability to create offense in ways this league has genuinely never witnessed before, is somehow a weird reason to buy a ticket and watch a game is just fundamentally absurd. But you know what? If we're going to start calling things weird, let's be completely honest about what is actually weird in this whole situation. For the better part of 3 decades, the WNBA has spent 27 years cultivating a fan base that, if you just look at the
reason, glazing over these players. Don't care about basketball, but care about the drama. Don't care about basketball, but care about, oh, she's in a relationship with her, and she's in a relationship with her, and ooh, she looks so good, and ooh, she looks so good. That's the weird reason that I've noticed that a lot of WNBA fans, not really fans of the basketball, they're fans of the the idea of getting with these chicks that are playing basketball. That's the weird reason to me.
That's not an insult. It's an observation based on what the market was rewarding with its attention. Think about the state of the league just before this explosion. Games were considered a success if they drew around 300,000 viewers on a good night. If you went to a game in person, you'd see arenas that were often half empty, if not more. The league itself was reportedly losing around $10 million every single year, a financial black hole that was being entirely subsidized by the NBA just to keep the lights on.
Love that player in a way that actually just feels like it's hate being disguised as love that they want to have against the rest of the league. And we sort of had this moment where the rest of the fans had to go like, you paid the same money for your ticket and you being here is also helpful to the sport.
Well, let's be fair here. Indiana Fever fans don't pay the same amount of money for their ticket as other fans do. The ticket price to get to an Indiana Fever game, got news for you. A lot more expensive than getting into a Minnesota.
And then, suddenly Caitlyn Clark arrives, and the entire landscape changes overnight. We're talking about games that are now pulling in 3.4 million viewers, more than 10 times the previous average. Ticket prices for Indiana Fever games haven't just increased, they've quadrupled. Arenas that struggled to sell tickets for years are now completely sold out, but only when Indiana comes to town. But if you listen to the logic of Katie Nolan and others who share her perspective, all of those new fans who are creating this unprecedented success are apparently just there for weird reasons. It's a line of thinking that is so counterintuitive to basic business and sports promotion that it borders on
going on without you for years and years and years. And now you come in here and just think that you can, because you love this one player and this one player is very good. She's very, very good. And like, I would love to just openly love them. Those are the types of moments that as a women's sports fan, I like really bristle.
And Sue Bird platforming this nonsense, it's just nasty work. Sue Bird platforming this, co-signing this in silence, nasty work. Sue Bird being in charge of the USA basketball team and doing this as well, allowing this.
Here is the hard reality check that it seems nobody in the legacy media bubble truly wants to acknowledge. The Caitlyn Clark fan base, when you look at the viewership numbers, the ticket sales, and the merchandise revenue, is by itself substantially larger than the entire legacy WNBA fan base that existed before her arrival. We can see the proof of this in what happened during her second year in the league. The league, to its credit, tried to capitalize on the momentum.
And for the World Cup to support the women, are planning on spending thousands of euros to travel across the pond to catch a game in the US. Spending EUs and shipping costs. Supporting multiple players. It's hate disguised as love. God forbid people love one player in particular and not the entire workforce of every single team in the league. Yeah, God forbid normal fans be normal fans. People grew up on fans of Michael Jordan. Were people throwing pitchforks because you didn't like Isaiah Thomas and the Bad Boys Pistons too? No, nobody threw a fucking fit about it. Did people throw a fit that you didn't like Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, and the Supersonics? No, nobody gave a rat's ass. But it's an issue now. Because the jealousy, the victimhood, the we want to be accepted. It's nasty, nasty, nasty business. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate all the support. Like the video, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
They smartly added more national television windows, they provided more accessible streaming options, and they scheduled games in better time slots. They had literally every structural advantage in place to build on the incredible momentum from Clark's rookie season. And what was the result? The viewership for the league as a whole grew by a mere 6%. Now, let's be clear, 6% growth isn't a failure, but it is definitely not the kind of explosive, league-altering growth that you would expect if the WNBA brand itself was the primary draw. That 6% is precisely the kind of number, and if you strip her games out of the equation, the baseline viewership for the rest of the league hasn't actually moved much at all. The Atlanta Dream, the Dallas Wings, the Washington Mystics, when they play games that don't involve the Indiana Fever or a team with a strong Iowa connection, they are still drawing the same sparse sparse crowds and modest TV ratings they always have. The Clark effect has not yet translated into a league-wide tide that lifts all boats. Maybe they're there for a weird. Now pay very close attention to how she frames this next part. You paid the same money for your ticket. Except that statement is not just a little inaccurate, and it's such an obvious falsehood that it truly reveals just how disconnected these commentators are from the actual business and economic reality of the WNBA today. Let's look at the actual numbers, shall we? A regular season ticket to watch an Atlanta Dream home game against a typical opponent will run you about $50. However, when the Indiana Fever come to town, that very same seat in the same arena suddenly skyrockets to $200. The product is the same, the arena is the same, but the price is 4 times higher. It's the same story across the league. Tickets to see the Minnesota Lynx average about $70, but when you add Caitlyn Clark to the marquee for a night, you can expect to pay around $250 for the exact same view of the court. Season tickets for the Indiana Fever, a team that was near the bottom of the league, became the most expensive in the entire WNBA literally overnight. And let's be crystal clear about why that happened. It wasn't because the team suddenly became a championship contender. They managed to win 20 games during Clark's rookie season, which was a modest improvement from the 13 games they won the year before. The massive price increase had nothing to do with the team's overall performance. It was entirely about one player, one singular, transcendent talent that people are willing to pay a massive premium to see in person. So no, Katie, with all due respect, Fever fans and fans who show up to see Clark play are not paying the same amount of money as everyone else. In fact, they are willingly paying 3 to 4 times more than the established price for a WNBA ticket. And they are doing it with enthusiasm, not because they're weird, but because they recognize that they are watching something truly special, a once-in-a-generation player who is changing the game right before their eyes. This conversation's been going on without you for years and years. And there it is. That's the entire gatekeeping mentality, the core of the resentment, distilled down into one single condescending sentence. It's a statement dripping with unearned superiority. It's this pervasive idea that because you supposedly suffered through the WNBA's long struggling years of obscurity, you have now earned some kind of moral authority over how the sport should be consumed and enjoyed by everyone else in this new era of popularity. It's a velvet rope mentality for a league that until recently couldn't even fill the club. But since we're on the topic, let's actually talk about those years, shall we? From its inception in 1997 all the way to 2023, the WNBA averaged a meager 400,000 viewers per game on national television. League-wide attendance hovered at a modest 6,000 fans per game, often with heavy discounts and giveaways. During that time, the league was forced to contract teams, it lost entire franchises, and it cycled through a series of television partners who consistently relegated their games to secondary, less visible networks. And my question is, during all of those lean years, where exactly was Katie Nolan's passionate, dedicated WNBA coverage? Where were all the deep dive think pieces, the dedicated segments on her ESPN shows, the relentless advocacy for a league that desperately needed a champion in the media? The truth is, she was at ESPN for years, with and yet the WNBA was simply not a significant part of her content strategy, for the same reason it wasn't part of anyone else's content strategy, because frankly, the audience just wasn't there. The audience didn't magically appear out of nowhere. It was created almost single-handedly by the arrival of Caitlyn Clark. Now here's what makes Sue Bird's central role in all of this particularly problematic and concerning. She isn't just a retired player hosting these conversations on her personal podcast. She holds the official title as the head of the women's side of USA Basketball, a position of real power and influence. This means she has official authority over who gets to represent the United States in major international competitions like the Olympics, and in that capacity, she is actively platforming, without any significant pushback, the dangerous narrative that Caitlyn Clark's massive fan base is somehow toxic or illegitimate. Just stop for a second and think about the implications of that. the very person who will have significant direct input on future Olympic roster decisions, is active. Do you remember the controversy surrounding the Paris Olympics roster selection? Caitlyn Clark, despite being undisputedly the biggest draw in all of women's basketball, was conspicuously left off the team. Now, after months of Sue Bird's podcast hosting these kinds of conversations, does that roster decision still look like it was made based purely on basketball reasons, or does it start to look like something else entirely? Let's finally address the massive elephant in the room that Caitlyn Clark is a straight woman in a league that has a very prominent LGBTQ+ culture. She is white in a league that is predominantly black. She plays a style of basketball that unapologetically emphasizes skill, finesse, and shooting over brute physicality. And perhaps most notably, she is relatively soft-spoken and deliberately avoids engaging in social media drama. And for a vocal and very online portion of the WNBA's legacy fan base and media, that combination of traits is in itself the problem. She doesn't fit the. This entire discourse is just so incredibly frustrating because the WNBA is finally experiencing the kind of unprecedented, explosive growth that it has been chasing for nearly 3 decades. And the primary response from within its own ecosystem is to try and police exactly how that growth is allowed to happen. It's like winning the lottery and then complaining about how the money is counted. Sports fandom at its very core, that's what makes it so passionate and compelling. You pick a team, you pick a player, or you pick a style of play that resonates with you on a personal level, and you invest in it emotionally. That's not weird, that's completely normal. That is the fundamental formula for how every single successful sports league in the world works. But for some reason, that isn't a strategy for growth. That is a textbook definition of gatekeeping. And ironically, it is the very same exclusionary attitude that kept the league small, stagnant, and financially dependent for the better part of 3 decades. In the end, the numbers simply do not lie. The television ratings, the ticket sales, the merchandise, and the social media engagement all tell the same undeniable story. The WNBA, as an institution, needs Caitlyn Clark's fans far more than Caitlyn Clark's fans will ever need the WNBA. And until the league, its players, and its legacy media figures finally come to terms with that fundamental reality, these divisive and counterproductive conversations will unfortunately never ever end.